Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, 1933. The center of the Al Salim dynasty. King Abdul Aziz has just gave permission to an American oil company to begin search of oil in his kingdom. The search was negotiated by Sheikh Abdullah Al Suleiman, the king's finance minister. They were granted rights to search for oil in the entire eastern region of Saudi Arabia. 1934. American archaeologists and Saudi translators set up camp in a small compound on the seacoast of Jabal. They planned to explore an area twice the size of Texas by camel, searching far and wide with very basic equipment. The men would search caves and take rock samples, hoping to get one droplet of hope. Optimism was low though. The men were travelling in unbearable heat across a desert with no shade, and they just weren't covering enough ground quickly enough. The Americans then began shipping in cars with the intention of outperforming the camels, but that just wasn't the case. After being defeated on land, the Americans took to the sky, taking hundreds of photos, processing them and studying them on land. After the build of a pier and the influx of equipment coming in by boat, everyone was getting a little bit impatient and decided to drill down to see what was there. Oil dribbled out onto the sand, but it wasn't enough. But it did bring hope, and a guarantee that oil was there somewhere. After many years and many efforts, still nothing. They found many water supplies and even gas, things that were definitely valuable to the country, but still no oil. In the seventh well, however, and after 4 years of trying, oil was struck. Workers from all across the country came to work, and the king even visited just to see it for himself. King Abdul Aziz delivered the first barrel to be sold, and Saudi Arabia was now sat on the biggest supply of petroleum in the world. The development of oil fields continued in Saudi Arabia, managed mainly by Aramco, a company formed by the partnership of Texaco and Chevron. By 1949, the production had reached 500,000 barrels per day and rose rapidly to 1 million barrels per day by 1954. With this money, the country grew rapidly. Cities were built and kingdoms were formed, and Saudi Arabia was now one of the richest and most important countries in the world. Today, oil accounts for roughly 92% of the Saudi budget. Saudi Arabia is one of the largest producers and exporters of oil in the world. The lucrative petroleum trade fostered sophisticated diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and the West, as well as Japan, China, and Southeast Asia. Most industrialized nations depend on petroleum imports, and critics claim this allows Saudi Arabia to have an outsized role in some foreign policy decisions, especially those surrounding the Middle East. The discovery of oil has also changed the demographics of the kingdom. Today, millions of foreign workers from the US, India, Pakistan, Ethiopia, and the Middle East live and work in Saudi Arabia. But the Saudi government always knew this wouldn't last forever. You can't just keep taking from the earth and expect it to keep on giving back. As of today, Saudi Arabia has proven reserves equivalent to 221.2 times its annual consumption. This means that without net exports, there would be about 221 years of oil left. So the Saudi wealth is a ticking time bomb, and with more than 90% of their wealth coming from oil, it's safe to say they have all their eggs in one basket. Knowing this, in 1971 the Public Investment Fund was created by Faisal bin Abdul Aziz. The purpose was to invest funds on behalf of the government of Saudi Arabia, and having $621 billion to play with, the plan was to be as diverse as possible. They began investing in everything from steel companies, technology companies, entertainment sectors, banks, planes, trains, automobiles, literally covering every single possible outcome protecting their wealth. The government has sought to allocate its petroleum income to transform its relatively undeveloped oil-based economy into a modern industrial state, while maintaining the kingdom's traditional Islamic values and customs. Although economic planners have not achieved all their goals, the economy has progressed rapidly. Oil wealth has increased the standard of living of most Saudis. However, significant population growth has strained the government's ability to finance further improvements in the country's standard of living. Heavy dependence on petroleum revenue continues, but industry and agriculture now account for a larger share of economic activity. The mismatch between the job skills of Saudi graduates and the needs of the private job market at all levels remains the principal obstacle to economic diversification and development. About 4.6 million non-Saudis are employed in the economy, but the traditional values they try to keep are still what separate them from the rest of the world. With the huge rise in British sport over the past 20 years, investments and club ownership from countries from all around the world have made the Premier League a playground for the mega-rich. Top businessmen from Russia, America and Asia now own the majority of the league. The most recent takeover in that time was the Abu Dhabi takeover at Manchester City. With a sovereign net worth of $22 billion, they were by far the richest club in the world. They transformed a bog-standard club in the shadow of their rivals to a world-leading European contending powerhouse. Not only did they invest in the club, but but they invested in the city and the community. If Saudi Arabia were to change the opinion people had on their country, sport was a great place to start. In 2020, the PIF began the takeover of Newcastle United, a club living in misery thanks to their owner Mike Ashley, who was constantly criticised and hated by fans for the way he ran the club into the ground. £300 million had been agreed between owner Mike Ashley and the Public Investment Fund. However, the Premier League controversially refused to ratify the deal, and so Mike Ashley subsequently engaged in various legal proceedings against the Premier League in an attempt to complete the takeover. On the 7th of October 2021, it was announced that the club would be acquired by the Public Investment Fund, after the Premier League stated it had received legally binding assurances that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will not control Newcastle United Football Club. But with 80% of ownership, it was quite clear where the majority of the money was going to be coming from. The sheer size and wealth compared to the whole of the Premier League is truly outstanding, and the owners got straight to work. They spent a staggering £123 million in the first transfer window, and have had an immediate success in the league. But with football, corruption has been around forever. The club with the most money has always been the best, and the sport itself has been ruined by money for decades. Its top ballers, FIFA and UEFA, have full control of the sport, and any money from Saudi Arabia will never change how the sport is played. But in this quest to be accepted, leaves many sports very vulnerable. In October 2021, a division of the PIF announced to the world a brand new golf tour, with Greg Norman declared to be its CEO. Live Golf, also referred to as the Super Golf League, had plans to take over the golfing world. With the same tactics as Newcastle, they planned on drawing players away from the PGA Tour for absurd amount of money. The first event was set to take place at the Centurion Golf Club in London in June 2022. At the same time of announcing the league, they didn't even have a full roster, but as much as the PGA tried to fight, money sadly won in the end. Phil Mickelson was the first big name to move for a staggering $200 million, shortly followed by Dustin Johnson for $150 million, and then the Open champion Cam Smith. The tour is heavily criticised and has been widely described as an attempt by the Saudi monarchy to improve its public image through sports washing. Player after player, the Live Golf lineup was getting better and better, and no matter what the media threw at the players, they only had one thing on their minds. The PGA Tour nearly has 100 years of history, and week in, week out, players aren't just playing for money, they're playing for a part of history. This modern new look on golf, though, was very much needed in many people's opinions. And it's true, the PGA Tour had become a little boring, and some of the traditions just needed updating, but to completely write it off was a little bit too much. The way Live Golf have gone about it, trying to leapfrog 100 years of history with billions of dollars, has torn the golfing world apart and may have repercussions on the sport. Technically, they've broken no laws, but this will be a real test on humanity to see if money can actually buy what you want. The football world stood together when the 20 top teams tried to form their own league, and maybe the golfing world will follow suit. The thing is, Live are here for the future. They aren't going anywhere, but paying players to come play for you rather than them wanting to, and paying networks to play your events rather than them paying you, really is a cheat code. It's a war on sport, and just a matter of which sport is next. Saudi Arabia will be hosting the 2029 Winter Olympics, despite climate change concerns from athletes, and also aims to host a World Cup and Olympics in the coming years, something you hope isn't bribed by money. So as a country tries to clear its name and secure its future, what will happen to the sports we love? Because at the end of the day, no matter how much money these businessmen have or resources these countries own, we the little people who pay our monthly subscriptions own it all. Without us, they have nothing. And if we don't watch, they don't prosper. So be for the money coming into your sport, or be against, but just make sure it doesn't go against your beliefs. Because sport is more than just money. Sport is a way of life.